I found out my stepsister and stepfather are planning to kill me. This is not a joke. They want my inheritance and they said they're going to off me. I caught it with their text messages. Here's what happened. All right, let's dive into the backstory. I'm a 26-year-old dude, and a few years ago, I was living the independent life away from any family drama. But to really start this story, I need to rewind to when my dad passed away. That hit us hard, really hard. My mom, she's the gentle type, and his death really took a toll on her. Fast forward a bit, and she's remarried to a guy named Carl. Now, Carl, he's got a daughter, Brenda, from his first marriage. I never warmed up to Carl. Something about him just seemed off from the get-go. Maybe it was how quickly he moved in or the way he hovered whenever my mom talked about finances. Brenda, she was another story. Same age as me, but lazy as heck. She flunked out of college and just glued herself to my mom's couch, living off her money. I moved out because I couldn't bear to watch what felt like a slow-motion disaster. Living on my own was like a breath of fresh air. I landed a decent job, got my own place, and life was looking up. Then last year I got a call from my mom's doctor. Her health was on the decline, some complex heart condition that I can barely pronounce. My mom needed more help, and I got this gut feeling that Carl and Brenda being alone with her during this time wasn't right. Driven by that feeling, I decided to move back into my mom's place. Breaking this news to Jenna, my girlfriend, was tough. We had plans, moving in together, maybe even adopting a dog. But Jenna got it, thank God for Jenna. She's always had this way of understanding things better than most. The day I moved back, everything looked the same but felt completely different. Carl was all charm, laying it thick with Buddy and Son every chance he got. Brenda barely acknowledged me, just a nod here and there like the world owed her something. I settled back into my old room, surprisingly untouched, except for a bit of dust. Seems like Carl wasn't big on cleaning unless it involved cleaning out my mom's bank account. I laid low the first few days, just watching their routines. Brenda was a permanent fixture in front of the TV, controller in hand, only moving to eat or sleep. Carl was out a lot, hitting the golf course or brunch with buddies he never mentioned before. Seeing my mom so fragile, man, it was tough. We talked a lot about the old days, about Dad. I steered clear of bringing up Carl or Brenda because every time I did, she'd just sigh and switch topics. Their spending habits were another red flag. Carl sported new golf clubs almost weekly, and Brenda's tech gadgets were always the latest model. They weren't exactly discreet about enjoying the perks of my mom's pension. I started monitoring the finances more closely, just to make sure my mom wasn't being completely taken for a ride. A couple of weeks in, I hired a nurse. Carl's choice of caregiver was about as useful as a chocolate fire guard, so I found Nora, someone with solid credentials who came highly recommended. Carl didn't like that, gave me an earful about how unnecessary it was, but I didn't budge. My mom needed real care, and I was going to make sure she got it. Balancing work and home life turned into a juggling act, but my boss was flexible. Nora was a lifesaver, keeping me updated on my mom's health and managing her meds professionally. It eased my mind a bit, having her around. Then one night I decided it was time to set up a camera in my room. Not that I'm paranoid, but trust was in short supply. It was just a small security camera, hidden away on a shelf. I figured it was more for my peace of mind than anything else. Boy, was I wrong. Little things started to seem out of place. A moved document here, a shifted folder there, nothing huge but enough to raise questions. Then checking the camera footage one evening, I caught them. Carl and Brenda sneaking into my room, searching through my stuff. They looked particularly interested in paperwork, likely about the will or power of attorney. My mom had mentioned wanting to make sure I was taken care of, and it seemed Carl and Brenda had gotten wind of that, and were not pleased. I kept the camera rolling, collecting more evidence every day. They were plotting, all right, but exactly what? I wasn't sure yet. All I knew was that I had to protect my mom and myself. I wasn't about to let them win, not under my watch. So, I've been back home for about a month now, and let me tell you, it feels like walking on eggshells. Every day something new pops up that just doesn't sit right with me. Carl and Brenda, they've got this routine down pat. He's out playing golf or meeting up with his so-called buddies. And she's usually locked in her room or shopping online with mom's credit card like it's going out of style. One morning, I was making coffee when I overheard Carl on the phone in the next room. He was speaking in hushed tones, which is unusual for him because he's typically loud enough that you can hear him without even trying. I couldn't catch the whole conversation, but it was something about property and money. Red flags went up all over the place for me. Later that day, when I was supposed to be at work, I stayed back, claiming I had a teleconference. I wanted to see what they'd do when they thought I wasn't around. Brenda slinked out of her room with this smug look on her face and joined Carl in the living room. They didn't notice me peeking from the hallway, started talking about securing their future and how they needed to handle the situation. I couldn't believe it. They were plotting right there in the open. I knew I needed to keep a closer eye on them, so I set up a couple more cameras in the common areas, one in the living room and another in the dining area. I'm no tech wizard, but Jenna helped me get them set up over the weekend. She was worried sick, but she knew as well as I did that we needed evidence if we were going to protect Mom. Things got weirder the following week. Mom had a good day, one of those when she's almost her old self. We spent some time in the garden, and she talked about Dad and the trips they used to take. I saw Carl watching us from the window, and he didn't look pleased. It's like he hated seeing her happy or something. That night, I reviewed the new camera footage and saw Carl entering Mom's office, a place he usually had no business being. He was rifling through her papers, probably looking for financial documents or the will. I decided it was time to confront Mom about the situation. It was a tough conversation, man. I didn't want to stress her out, but she needed to know. I told her about Carl and Brenda, about the cameras, and what I suspected. Mom was quiet for a long time. Then she just nodded and said she'd been feeling uneasy too, but was too afraid to say anything. She asked me to handle it, to make sure everything was okay. It broke my heart to see her like this, trusting me to fix a mess in her own house. The next day, I took a day off and followed Carl. I know, sounds like some spy movie stuff, but I had to know what he was up to. He met up with a couple of shady-looking characters at a golf club. I couldn't get close enough to hear, but I took some photos. It looked serious. When I got back home, I checked Brenda's room while she was out. Found receipts for stuff she bought with Mom's money. Expensive stuff. Way beyond normal. That evening, I tried to get more info out of Carl casually. Just some small talk about his day. He brushed me off, said he was busy and had things to take care of. Brenda was watching TV, smirking like she knew something I didn't. It was infuriating. A few days later, things came to a head. I got a call from the bank. There had been some large transactions from Mom's account, transactions neither Mom nor I had authorized. I confronted Carl with the evidence. He tried to brush it off, saying he was managing her finances and it was all under control. But I saw right through him. I told him I had set up a meeting with the bank and our lawyer to go over everything. Carl's face went white. He tried to argue, but I was firm. Told him this wasn't up for discussion. Brenda heard the commotion and came down asking what was going on. When I told her, she flipped out saying I had no right to interfere, but I stood my ground. Mom watched all this from the doorway and I could tell she was scared, but also relieved that someone was finally standing up to them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my mind, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Jenna called, and we talked for hours. She kept saying I was doing what was necessary, protecting Mom when she couldn't protect herself. It helped, hearing that. The next day, Brenda tried to sweet-talk Mom, probably trying to sway her before the meeting. I watched them from the kitchen, ready to step in if Brenda crossed a line. Carl avoided me altogether, which was fine by me. So here we are. The meeting with the bank and the lawyer is tomorrow. I'm nervous, man. It feels like everything's coming to a head, and I don't know what's going to come out of it. But I do know one thing. I'm not backing down. Not when Mom's safety and well-being are on the line. I'll fight these leeches with everything I've got. Stick around, folks. Chapter 3 is going to be a doozy. I can feel it. All right, where did I leave off? Yes, the big meeting with the bank and our lawyer. Man, I was gearing up for it like it was the final boss in a video game or something. Couldn't sleep much the night before. Kept running through all the scenarios in my head. Morning came, and it was go time. I had all the paperwork lined up, all the unauthorized transaction reports printed out, and the camera footage on a USB stick. Felt like a detective or something, gathering all this evidence. Mom was nervous. You could see it. She kept fidgeting with her hands, and every time the phone rang, she'd jump a little. Carl was unusually quiet, which was a relief because his constant blabbering about nothing usually grated on my nerves. Brenda, on the other hand, was a mess. She was trying to play it cool, but her pacing back and forth in the living room told another story. We headed to the bank first. The meeting was set up in one of those sterile conference rooms that always feel a bit too cold. Our bank manager, Mr. Thompson, was there along with a couple of other suits I hadn't seen before. They all had that serious, no-nonsense look on their faces. I laid out everything, showed them the transactions, the dates, the amounts, and how none of them matched up with Mom's usual spending pattern. Mr. Thompson listened, nodding along, asking a few pointed questions here and there. Mom confirmed she hadn't authorized any of those expenses, her voice barely above a whisper. I could tell she was embarrassed, like she felt she was causing trouble, but this was her money, her life. Carl tried to interrupt a few times, spinning some story about how he was just trying to help manage Mom's finances better, investing in this and that. But Mr. Thompson wasn't having it. He shut Carl down pretty quick, said they'd be conducting a full audit of Mom's accounts and that any discrepancies would be reported. Next up was the lawyer's office, which was even more intimidating if you can believe it. Our family lawyer, Mr. Daniels, had been with us since Dad's time. He's this grizzled old guy who looks like he's seen it all, and probably has. He reviewed the documents I brought, his brows furrowing deeper with every page. When we showed him the camera footage, his reaction was something else. He paused the video, pinched the bridge of his nose, and sighed. "This is serious," he said, looking up at Mom. "We might be looking at charges of financial abuse and fraud." Mom just nodded, tears in her eyes. She knew this was serious, but hearing it said out loud by someone like Mr. Daniels made it all too real. We discussed our next steps. Mr. Daniels suggested we change all of Mom's account passwords and security settings. He also recommended setting up a new will, one that would be airtight against any more of Carl and Brenda's shenanigans. He mentioned getting a restraining order if things escalated, which seemed like a real possibility given how Carl and Brenda had been acting. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a mix of relief and dread. We were doing the right things, but it was clear this was just the beginning. Carl was silent on the ride home, stewing. Brenda kept trying to text someone, probably looking for a way out of the mess she'd helped make. Back home, things got tense, real fast. Carl packed up some of his things and left, saying he needed some time to think things over. Brenda locked herself in her room. Mom and I sat in the kitchen, not really talking, just sitting together, trying to process everything. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about all we discovered and how far Carl and Brenda might still go. I got up and checked the locks on all the doors and windows, double-checked the new security settings I'd installed on Mom's accounts. I didn't know what Carl might try next, but I wasn't taking any chances. The next morning was quiet, too quiet. Brenda was gone. Turns out she'd packed a bag in the night and left. No note, no goodbye, just gone. Mom was upset, of course, but there was also a sense of relief in her eyes, like she could finally breathe again without Brenda's dark cloud hanging over the house. We spent the day reviewing everything with Mr. Daniels over the phone, making sure every legal I was dotted and T crossed. He was going to push on with the financial abuse investigation, and he advised us to be vigilant, keep documenting everything. So here I am writing this down because I don't want to forget any details. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I'm here, I'm watching, and I'm ready to protect my mom from whatever Carl and Brenda might still throw our way. Stick around, guys. This story is far from over, and I've got a feeling there are still a few twists left in it. I'm just hoping we can find some peace at the end of this crazy ride. All right, buckle up, folks, because things went from 0 to 100 real fast after Brenda bolted. The house was eerily quiet without her and Carl's constant scheming filling the air. Mom and I were trying to get back to some kind of normal, enjoying the peace, but I guess that was too much to ask for. A couple of days after Brenda left, Carl came back. He didn't even knock, just used his key like nothing happened. Found him in the kitchen making coffee like it was just another Tuesday. I was in the living room, and let me tell you, my heart started racing when I saw him. Had no idea what his game plan was now. "Need to talk," he said, plain and simple. I wasn't about to let him dictate anything, but I figured I'd hear him out. Maybe he was ready to cut his losses and move on. Mom came down when she heard his voice, and I saw her brace herself against the doorframe. She looked scared, but there was also this steely kind of resolve in her eyes. No more Mrs. Nice Guy, I guess. Carl had this whole sob story ready, started talking about how he'd made some bad decisions but only ever wanted to help, and how he missed my dad. Man, it was like watching someone flip a switch. Fake tears and all. But Mom and I weren't buying what he was selling, not anymore. I asked him straight up, "What about the money, Carl, and sneaking around looking for the will?" He tried to brush it off, said he was just trying to be proactive about finances, that he thought he was doing the right thing. But I cut him off, showed him the printouts of the bank statements again, and this time I had the transaction times and locations. Proof that he was lying. It got heated. Carl's facade started to crack, and his real agenda came out. He admitted he'd been trying to secure his and Brenda's future because he was worried about being left with nothing when Mom passed. The gall of this guy, talking about Mom like she was just a stepping stone to his comfort. Mom lost it. She told him she'd been too blind, too trusting because he'd been her connection to my dad, her late husband, someone she loved dearly. Hearing that broke my heart, guys. She was so vulnerable, and this jerk exploited that. We told Carl it was time to leave, for good this time. His response? He actually threatened to sue us for emotional distress and loss of residency. Can you believe that? Luckily, we had Mr. Daniels on speed dial. A quick call put that nonsense to bed. Mr. Daniels reminded Carl about the ongoing investigation and suggested he reconsider his position unless he wanted to add legal fees to his troubles. Carl left, but not quietly. Knocked a chair over on his way out, slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Mom and I just stood there in the aftermath, kind of shell-shocked. We spent the rest of the day going through every document, every account, making sure Carl hadn't left us any more surprises. That night, we talked a lot about what we'd do next. It was clear we needed a fresh start, some new boundaries. We decided to change the locks, update all security systems, and even talked about selling the house and moving somewhere smaller, just the two of us. It felt good, making plans, taking control back. But then, as if we hadn't had enough excitement, Brenda showed up the next morning. Alone, no luggage, looking a mess. She'd come to apologize, she said. Turns out, life on her own wasn't as glamorous as she'd thought it would be. She was broke, her friends had ditched her, and here she was, crawling back. Mom's a softie, always has been. She listened to Brenda, offered her a seat and coffee, but I was wary. Had to be, right? We sat down at the kitchen table, the same place where we'd had countless family breakfasts, and listened to Brenda spill her guts. She talked about feeling overshadowed by Carl, about feeling pushed to do things she knew were wrong. It was a lot to take in. We decided to give her a chance, on a trial basis. Strict rules, limited access to finances, and mandatory family counseling. Brenda agreed. Seemed relieved even. Guess hitting rock bottom can change your perspective, so now we're trying to navigate this new dynamic. It's awkward, tense at times, but also kind of hopeful. Mom's doing better, smiling more, and I'm keeping my guard up, making sure Brenda sticks to the plan. It's a day-by-day thing, but we're getting there. Things had been somewhat calm at home after Carl's last visit, the one where he'd dropped off those bewildering documents. We had just begun to piece together a semblance of normalcy when Brenda asked for a family meeting one evening after dinner. The atmosphere was immediately tense. Her serious tone and uneasy glances suggested that this wasn't just about any household matter. We all settled in the living room, the air thick with anticipation. Brenda took a deep breath, her hands nervously fidgeting in her lap. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, avoiding eye contact. "And there's something I need to tell you all. It's about Dad, about Carl." Mom and I exchanged a worried look. We had been through so much already. The thought of more hidden secrets was exhausting. Brenda continued, her voice shaky. "Dad, he had plans. Plans that involved me. He wanted me to help him get rid of you," she said, her eyes now meeting mine, filled with remorse. "He thought if you were out of the picture, somehow, he could manipulate Mom into changing her will, leaving everything to him." The room went silent. It was one thing to suspect Carl of financial deceit and manipulation, but to hear that he'd stooped so low as to consider something as heinous as harming me to gain access to Mom's wealth was chilling. Mom's face drained of color. "Oh, Brenda," she whispered, her voice a mix of sadness and disbelief. "I didn't go along with it, I swear," Brenda rushed to add, her words tumbling out in her urgency to explain. "I told him no, that I wouldn't be part of any plan like that. That's part of why I left suddenly that day. I couldn't bear it, being part of his schemes, watching how he treated everyone." Brenda's confession seemed to unburden her somewhat, but the rest of us were left reeling. I felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger that Carl could even conceive of such a plan, and relief that Brenda had the conscience to reject it. "We need to be careful," I said finally, breaking the heavy silence. "Carl is desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." Mom nodded, a determined look settling over her features. "We will be," she assured, her voice stronger now. "We'll handle this together, as a family." We spent the rest of the evening discussing our next steps. It was clear that we needed to tighten our security measures and remain vigilant. Brenda's willingness to come clean about Carl's intentions was a grim reminder of the lengths he might go to. The next day, we called Mr. Daniels, our lawyer, and updated him on Brenda's revelations. He advised us to document everything and consider additional legal protections. We also contacted the local police to inform them of the potential threat, just to be on the safe side. They promised to keep an extra watch on our property and advised us on further safety measures we could take. Despite the turmoil, there was a silver lining in seeing Brenda fully turn her back on Carl's manipulations. She was making real efforts to mend her ways and rebuild her relationship with Mom and me. Her confession, while disturbing, had brought us closer. It tore down the last of the walls she had built around herself. As days turned into weeks, our home began to feel secure once more, fortified not just by alarms and locks, but by the renewed trust and unity among us. Brenda enrolled in some community college classes, focusing on her future, determined to prove that she was more than Carl's daughter. The days following Brenda's harrowing confession about Carl's intentions felt like a whirlwind. Everything accelerated quickly once we decided to involve the authorities more deeply. Brenda, carrying the weight of her knowledge, was determined to see justice served, not just for her own redemption, but for the safety and security of our family, especially Mom. After gathering ourselves and ensuring every detail of Brenda's testimony was meticulously documented, we contacted the local police department. The urgency of the situation was palpable as we drove to the station, the silence in the car filled with a mix of anxiety and resolve. Brenda was quiet, but her determination was evident. She was ready to face whatever came next. At the police station, Brenda took a deep breath and relayed her entire story to the officers. She explained how Carl had planned to manipulate and potentially harm me to gain unrestricted access to Mom's finances. The officers listened intently, their expressions a mix of shock and seriousness as they took notes. It was clear that the gravity of her revelations was not lost on them. The police acted swiftly. With Brenda's detailed account and the evidence we had collected over the months, financial records, Carl's erratic behaviors, and threats, the case against him solidified rapidly. They coordinated with our lawyer, Mr. Daniels, who provided additional legal documentation and testimony that corroborated Brenda's claims. Within days, an arrest warrant was issued for Carl. The police caught him at his residence without incident. He seemed resigned, perhaps finally understanding the severity of his actions and the inevitability of facing consequences. News of his arrest spread quickly in our community, a mix of disbelief and relief palpable among those who knew our family. Carl's subsequent trial was a culmination of all the efforts and truths we had painstakingly gathered. Brenda was called to testify, and despite the high emotions of seeing Carl again, she stood strong. Her voice didn't waver as she recounted the manipulation and threats, her testimony painting a clear picture of Carl's manipulative nature and malicious intent. The evidence against Carl was overwhelming. Between the financial discrepancies, Brenda's testimony, and additional corroborations from other investigations, the case was ironclad. The courtroom was tense as the jury returned with their verdict, guilty on multiple counts of fraud, attempted extortion, and endangerment. Carl was sentenced to a substantial term in prison, reflecting the seriousness of his crimes against our family. The judge's words were stern as he addressed Carl, condemning his actions and the betrayal of trust that had endangered the lives and well-being of a family that had once welcomed him. The relief in the courtroom was palpable as the gavel fell. Mom held my hand tightly, tears of relief and a bit of sorrow in her eyes. It was over, at least the legal battle. Brenda exhaled deeply, a visible weight lifted from her shoulders. In the days that followed, our family began the slow process of healing. The house felt safer, lighter, as if Carl's presence had been a shadow that was finally gone. Mom started to smile more, her laughter returning in bursts that filled the rooms with warmth. Brenda, now more a sister than ever, was integral to our healing process. Her honesty and bravery had not just helped incarcerate Carl, but had mended bridges within our family. We all understood that while the legal proceedings were over, the emotional recovery was just beginning. But there was a newfound strength among us, a unity that Carl's actions had unwittingly forged. As I reflect on these events, writing this chapter in the quiet of the evening, I realize the saga was as much about uncovering deceit as it was about discovering the resilience and depth of our family bonds. We were tested, undoubtedly, but not broken. Instead, we emerged stronger, closer, and more protective of one another. Carl's imprisonment was a closure of a painful chapter, but it was also the beginning of a new one for us, a chapter of rebuilding and moving forward, with the past firmly behind us, where it belongs. We had learned that together, there was no hardship too great, no betrayal too deep, that we couldn't overcome as a family.